Welcome back to Football Daily. Now, you may have seen our top 10 forgotten heroes before, but today we've made a whole team of amazing players you've never heard of. Goalkeeper, Amadeo Carrizo. Now, everyone should have heard of Lev Yashin, the only keeper to win the Ballon d'Or, and we were even tempted to put in Ricardo Zamora, whose name is now used for the award given to the keeper who has the lowest goals per game ratio in La Liga. But our man between the sticks is Amadeo Carrizo, a stopper who revolutionized the role. An inspiration to Higuita and Chilavert, Carrizo was the first keeper to wear proper gloves, the first to leave the penalty area, and also one of the first to kickstart counterattacks from a goal kick. Not just an innovator, Carrizo was also a successful player, winning 5 championship trophies at River Plate alongside Alfredo Di Stefano, and he also made 20 appearances for Argentina in a 25-year career. Defender, Domingos da Guia. First up in our defensive three is Domingos da Guia. The man dubbed Domingada has long been considered the greatest ever Brazilian centre-half. Standing at 6'1", Domingos wasn't only physically dominant, but his technique in the tackle and reading of the game set him apart from other players during the 1930s and 40s. Domingos' ability wasn't his only important contribution to his national side, as he helped symbolise racial harmony in Brazil during the rise of the new state. Named the greatest Brazilian player ever by Obdulio Varela, the centre-half won titles in Brazil, Uruguay and Argentina, asserting his dominance across South America. Unfortunately, Domingos failed to win anything of note with the Seleção, bar the Copa Rio Branco and the Copa Roca, but he did play in the 1938 World Cup, where Brazil finished third. And Domingos' genes obviously carried his footballing ability on, as his son Ademir played nearly 1,000 games for Palmeiras and scored 153 goals. Centre-back, Billy Wright. Next up we have Billy Wright, a one-club legend who was nearly rejected as a youngster due to his small frame. Wright became one of England's greatest ever players, with a golden career and a glistening trophy cabinet that reflected his quality. Wright made 490 appearances for Wolverhampton Wanderers, and his 20 years at the club yielded 3 First Division titles and an FA Cup. The tough centre-half also made over 100 appearances during wartime football, despite his main job working as a physical training instructor in the army. Wright was also setting records for the English national team, becoming the first player in football to win over 100 international caps, and he captained the side for 90 of those games, a record shared by the great Bobby Moore. The 1957 runner-up to the Ballon d'Or lost his fight against pancreatic cancer in 1994 at the age of 70. And his ashes were scattered across his second home, Molineux. Centre-back, Armando Picchi. Picchi was Helenio Herrera's eventual captain at La Grande Inter, and it was his coach's decision to transform him from right-back into a libero, which made the Italian one of the best defenders during Inter's golden era in the 1960s. As captain, Picchi led Inter to 3 Scudetti and won 2 European Cups, as well as tutoring the likes of Jacinto Facchetti, who would take the armband not long after Picchi departed the club. Despite his success domestically, Picchi's talents weren't effectively used by the Italian national team. He was left out of the 1966 World Cup squad by Edmondo Fabri before a fractured pelvis led him to miss out on Euro 1968. Unfortunately, Picchi died at just 34 after a battle with cancer, and shortly after his death, his boyhood club Livorno named their stadium after the great defender. Centre midfield, José Andrade. Anchoring the midfield is Uruguayan José Andrade. The Black Marvel was a wing half back in the day, which would be close to a modern defensive midfielder or a fullback. Before football became a paid profession, Andrade worked as a carnival musician, playing the drums, violin, and the tambourine, and his musical rhythm off the pitch must have aided him when he was on it, as he controlled the game through his impeccable technique during an era where physicality, which Andrade lacked, was considered the highest trait in football. A 3-time title winner whilst at Nacional and Peñarol, Andrade's most famous moments came playing for the national team, winning 2 Olympic gold medals, 3 Copa Americas, and the World Cup in 1930. Not a bad trophy haul. It wasn't all easy for Andrade though. Reportedly, he picked up syphilis during the mid-20s, and he lost his pace and eventually his eyesight near the end of his playing days. By his death at the age of 56, Andrade was penniless and suffered from alcohol addiction. A sad end to a wonderful career. Central midfielder, Josep Samitier. Barcelona's midfield general from 1919 to 1932, Pep Samitier was a maverick, albeit a supremely talented one. In his central berth, the Catalonian scored 333 times for the Blaugrana in 454 matches, a strike rate better than Zlatan Ibrahimovic has managed across his entire career. Put his ridiculous goal tally alongside teammate Paulino Alcantara, and it's no surprise that their side won 12 Catalan championships, 5 Copas del Rey and the first Spanish league title. Once the highest earner in Spain, Samitier's time at Barca came to an abrupt end when they dropped him from the first team squad, and he moved to La Liga rivals Madrid at the age of 30. After his retirement, the Grasshopper man became a bit of an enigma. After spells at Atletico Madrid and Nice, Samitier took up the reins at Barcelona, winning a La Liga title and helping scout László Kubala for the Catalans. However, when Alfredo Di Stefano was set to join Barcelona and suspiciously ended up at Madrid, Samitier was accused of being a double agent due to his ties to Los Blancos and his friendship with Spanish dictator Francisco Franco. Despite all the conspiracy theories, Samitier remained one of the Culés' favourite sons, and he received a state funeral when he died in 1972. Central midfielder, Jean Tigana. Part of the Magic Square alongside 3-time Ballon d'Or winner Michel Platini, it's perhaps understandable that Tigana's influence in France's 1984 European Championship win went under the radar a little bit more than it should have. Though some might associate the defensive midfielder with his disastrous time managing Fulham, the man from Mali had a glittering playing career spent entirely in France. After making his name at Toulon, Tigana hit his heights at Bordeaux, winning 3 Ligue 1 titles and 2 Coupe de France, with that Euros win sandwiched in between. His performances at the tournament were so great that he came in second for the Ballon d'Or that year behind Platini, and saw out his last 2 seasons as a footballer at Marseille, winning 2 league titles on the bounce. Attacking midfielder, Valentino Mazzola. The captain and attacking mid of the Grande Torino, Mazzola was the star of a side which dominated Italian football for 5 consecutive seasons before he, and all but one of his teammates, met a tragic end. Mazzola's life was an extraordinary story. A boy from humble beginnings on the outskirts of Milan, he saved Andrea Bonomi's life at the age of 10. Bonomi went on to become the captain of AC Milan, and Mazzola's son Sandro would eventually go on to be part of La Grande Inter under Helenio Herrera. But Mazzola himself made his mark with Torino, scoring 118 goals in just under 200 games for the Turin side. His influence was so great that teammate Rigamonti was quoted as saying, "He alone is half the squad. The other half is made up by the rest of us together." Mazzola was just 30 years old when the Superga disaster tragically took his life. He could have missed the flight, but was determined that he would not miss the match for his beloved club. Forward, Mágico González. After the hundreds of comments on our EFD videos, Mágico González finally makes the cut in our Forgotten Heroes list. The Salvadoran was described as a man who could do it all, but simply didn't want to, and his relaxed take on football and life in general stopped him from reaching the heights he seemed destined for. Diego Maradona described Jorge González as without a doubt one of the top 10 players he'd ever seen, and they almost became teammates at Barcelona when the Salvadoran was invited to Barca's pre-season tour of the USA. In typical González style, he missed his first flight to the States, and his tendency to not give a fuck cost him the biggest move of his career. During the tour, Maradona organised a fire alarm to go off during the night, and while the entire hotel was evacuated, Mágico stayed in his bed with the waitress. What a man. It was the final straw for Barca, and though González claimed it was the manager's departure that cost him the move, many suspect they'd had enough of his antics and thought he wasn't worth the gamble. As a result, the only clubs he ended up playing for outside El Salvador were Cádiz and Valladolid, winning nothing during his time in Spain. Forward, László Kubala. Our second forward is László Kubala, whose road into football was a tough one to say the least. Fleeing socialist Hungary on the back of a truck, Kubala found himself in Austria playing for Pro Patria and was invited to try out for Torino, but pulled out when his son fell ill. That turned out to be a stroke of fortune, as signing for the Granata would have put Kubala on the fateful Superga flight alongside Mazzola. Fleeing Hungary without completing his military service put Kubala on bad terms with the Hungarian FA, and FIFA backed the federation. As a result, he never managed to play for the Golden Team, but did help form Hungaria, a side full of refugees fleeing Eastern Europe, and was able to go up against the likes of Madrid, Spain and Espanyol. As a result of those matches, Kubala joined Barcelona, and eventually childhood teammates Sandor Kocsis and Zoltan Szybor joined him in 1958. Kubala scored 131 times for the Catalans in 186 matches. He won 4 La Liga titles and 5 Copas del Generalissimo. Kubala also featured for Spain and scored 11 goals, but despite playing for 3 separate national teams, the striker failed to appear at a major international tournament. Forward, Fernando Peyroteo. We've all seen ridiculous goal-scoring records from the likes of Josep and Ferenc Puskás, but we don't reckon anything tops the insane numbers that Fernando Peyroteo put up over his 12-year career. Joining Sporting CP when he was 19, Peyroteo was part of a famous quintuple at the club, which was nicknamed the 5 Violins, and in his first season he scored 34 league goals. Impressive, right? That's a fantastic return in a normal 38-game season, but Peyroteo reached that number in just 14 games. Other bonkers seasons include 28 goals in 12 games and a remarkable 43 goals in 19 appearances. By the end of his career, the Portuguese had netted 544 goals in 334 appearances, a strike rate of 1.63 goals per game, the highest in footballing history. And oh yeah, did we mention he gave Eusebio his international debut for Portugal?
So we hope you enjoyed that, and if you want to check out more of our videos, then click here on screen. Don't forget to like and subscribe and get on our Snapchat and our Twitter.